All right, let's talk about the Detroit Lions. Obviously, this is one of the top contenders, not just in the NFC, but the entire NFL. But we are heading into a massive opportunity season for Detroit. It's going to be all hands on deck, veterans, rookies. Everyone's going to have to step up. And there's one kind of under the radar rookie who's making a big name for himself early on, impressing all the right people, including headman Dan Campbell. We'll get to all that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew. And this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Detroit Lions are incredibly talented. We all understand that. We're not looking for a lot of these rookies to come out and just dominate day one. But when you talk about guys that can be key depth pieces and certainly developmental prospects in the long term, you'll always have to be focused on that as a football team. You don't want to just be a 1 year, one and done. We're looking for a sustained success out of Detroit. That's what Holmes wants. That's what Campbell wants. And that's what they're targeting. And there's one rookie, a 6th-round draft pick in particular. We're talking Ahmed Hassanin, that's doing all the right things up to this point, including impressing head coach Dan Campbell. Let's get into the article. Then we'll get into some interesting data on the other side. First up is the report courtesy of Lions Wire. The pads haven't come on during practices yet, so it's tough to gauge Hassanin's overall skill level. This much is obvious. He's extremely high energy and passionate. Lions head coach Dan Campbell has taken notice. I like his intensity. I like his urgency. He seems to be a pretty smart guy. I like hearing that. Campbell said of Hassanin prior to the final OTA session. There's things he's going to have to learn from. He's a little bit raw, but there's nothing that tells me, man, I don't like this guy, or he's miles away, or something like that. Campbell did caution that his reps were walked through. He didn't get live reps. We had to back off on some things. Still, it's easy to see why number 61 appealed to the Lions in the draft process. That caveat's always important, right? We are working through the time of year. We're not getting really 100% live reps. Pads are not on like we'll see during training camp. But when you focus on what coaches are saying about rookies, certainly under the radar day 3 picks like Hassanin, it's very clear that some of these rookies stand out with their mentality, their effort, their energy, and their intelligence. And that's what we're getting from Hassanin. And when it comes to smart players, I always look for improvement, because those are the guys, especially day 3 picks, that can go on to develop and be key players. Guys who are smart, the more reps they get, the more they see, the better they become. And if you look at Hassanin's career, that's exactly what he showed at the collegiate ranks. Let's go ahead and pull up our first chart here, talking about Ahmed Hassanin's improvement. This is his overall grade, his run defense grade, his tackling grade, and his pass rush grade from 2023 to 2024, his 2 years where he was a big-time player for Boise State in terms of getting a lot of playing time. And you can see in every single metric, going from left to right, 23 in blue, 24 in red, overall run defense, tackling, pass rush, he got better every single category from his first year as a full-time player to his final year as a full-time player. This is what you're looking for. When a coach says a guy is a smart guy, is an intense guy, high energy guy, great work ethic, you want to see the results. Because if you're going to be a hard worker, if you're going to be a smart guy, you better be getting better, right? If you're just a high energy guy or a guy who's supposedly smart and you're not improving, you're not helping anybody out, right? I don't need a guy to quote Shakespeare. I need a guy who gets better at football. That's what Hassanin proved during his time at the Boise State Broncos, and he seems likely to continue to develop and grow for Detroit going forward. But it's not just his improvement that should get people excited about this prospect. It's his actual production his final season at Boise State. Let's go into our next chart here to highlight what I'm talking about. So there are 3 numbers in sort of raw production, according to PFF, that we really look for when it comes to edge defenders. We look for stops, which is PFF statistics saying this is a play that ends in a loss for the offense, right? If it's 2nd and 3 and you run up the middle and get 2 yards, you didn't get the first down. That's a stop. That's a win for the defense, loss for an offense, as an example. Pressures, getting pressure on the quarterback, and sacks. And you can see, comparing Hassanin to 3 other big name-ish edge players that went prior to him in the NFL draft, Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State, James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, Hosea Stewart out of Michigan. You can see that all of these guys are either not as good in terms of raw production as Hassanin or right at the same level. You can see in terms of the stops metric, they're all right about the same level. Hassanin at the same metric as a 4th rounder, 1st rounder, and 3rd rounder. He goes in the 6th round. You talk about pressures, only Sawyer had more. Hassanin had more than Stewart and James Pierce Jr., and they went well before him. And then you can see sacks there right about the same level across the board for all these guys. So we're talking about a kid here in Hassanin who is getting better and better and better. And already, based on his improvement, he's just as good as guys who went in the 1st round, the 4th round, and the 3rd round. And the Lions, of course, got him at pick number 198. We know Detroit, they're very good. They're very talented, certainly at the top of the roster. But Lions fans, you know this depth reared its ugly head due to a bunch of unfortunate injuries at the end of the 2024 season, and certainly showed up in that playoff defeat at the hands of Washington. Getting depth, quality depth, is important. That's what you've got in Hassanin here. while also getting a guy who has the capability to improve and get better. He showed it in college. He's showing it with Dan Campbell. He's showing it with the Detroit Lions right now. This looks like it has a great chance to be a huge steal, a great pickup for the Detroit Lions. Miles, I know you've got a few thoughts on this, but first, Lions fans, in the comment section below, we're talking defensive ends, we're talking edge defenders. So I got a question for you guys. Who is your favorite edge defender, defensive end, whatever you want to call it, in Lions history? Can't say Aiden Hutchinson. All right, he's young. I know he's great, but let's put him aside. Outside of Hutchinson, who is your favorite Lions edge rusher, defensive end, whatever you want to call it, in team history? We want to hear from you guys. Put them in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. What are your thoughts on Hassanin, the Lions defense, and just everything going on with Detroit right now?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is a great strategy that Detroit has gone with because I think you hit on it. The injuries, everything, depth at the edge position. We saw last year how quickly everything can fall apart. They still did well through the stretch, but I feel like in the playoffs, if they had had a little extra pass rush oomph, it would have helped them out some here. And this is what they did. They loaded up on edge guys with undrafted free agents, whether it's guys they drafted, whether it's free agents they brought in. They have now a ton of depth to work through and get their guys. Actually, they have 10 edge players on the roster right now. I know it's early, you're still whittling down the roster through all this part. Half those guys won't even be there come the time to make the 53, but they are looking at depth, especially at the edge position. And this guy, he screams to me like a guy that is a Detroit Lion. He is a Dan Campbell type of guy. He is a guy that I would not be surprised whatsoever if he makes this roster and gets some playing time this year. Definitely rotational. I don't think he's going to be starting anytime soon as far as this season, but this is a guy that I think can get some work in and be a very productive member of this team. It's like you showed, this guy, he has the production level of a lot of the best players that went in this draft in the mid rounds. This guy could have easily been a mid round. He was on Boise State. Boise State did really well last year. He was productive in his own right. I think he had 24 sacks the last 2 seasons as far as what he was able to bring to the table. This guy is good. There's a lot to like about him when you see him, and you just love to see the intangibles. That's the thing we have to key on here. We're not going to see, him in full reps in practice yet. Dan Campbell already said that. Take a breath on that. Let's wait until all of that comes to fruition. But when you look at the intangibles, you look at what he can bring to the table that you can't necessarily measure, everything sounds good so far. He has unbridled intensity. This guy seems like he has a high motor. They say many people are saying, as guys are out on the field, coaches are yapping at people trying to get them hyped up. This is not the guy that you need to hype up. He's going to hype himself up. He is a true leader. He is very good in that regard. And Dan Campbell said he's a smart player. He thinks between the ears. This is a guy that really can bring a lot to the table in that aspect. So when you look at that, he's got the production. We think it's going to translate. We have to wait and see if it does. But when you look at the intangibles, you look at what he brings to the table in that regard, he's smart, he's driven, and he's got that high intensity, high motor. It seems like a great fit for the Detroit Lions here, and I think this was a great pickup for this team going forward.
Yeah, when you look at his draft profile, right off the get go, you look at the 3 bullets according to NFL.com in terms of Hassanin's strengths. And this is exactly what you're looking for, certainly out of a day 3 defensive lineman. And just reading him off to you here, racked up 32 tackles for loss over the last 2 seasons. You mentioned his sack total, 24, I believe. This is a guy who is a productive player. He's not a guy who wasn't putting up stats. He did it in college. How about next? Plays each snap with ideal motor and passion. Sounds like a Dan Campbell Detroit Lion to me. And finally, good knockback pop when exploding hands into the frame. Again, physical dude, sounds like a Detroit Lion to me. One of the things that can happen, and we've seen it through every single team when they go through a little bit of a surge, sometimes they lose their culture, they lose their secret sauce. And what Dan Campbell brought to Detroit and the men he brought with him in terms of both players and assistant coaches built in this culture in Detroit of being physical, tough, hyper intense, hyper competitive, right? A little bit of a renegade mentality as well. And that culture has been really special over the past 2 seasons. But sometimes what happens is when you draft and try and replace guys, whether it's through the draft or free agency, you can get that watered down as guys go on and retire and go to other teams, and you lose that secret sauce. A way you can help mitigate that is by drafting your kind of guys. Bill Parcells famously did this throughout his career, whether it's with the Giants, the Patriots, the Jets, the Dallas Cowboys. His protege, Bill Belichick, of course, famously did this with the New England Patriots. A lot of people were wondering half the time what Belichick was doing with his draft picks. He had an archetype in mind in terms of the kind of guy he wanted to fit what he wanted in New England, the famous Patriot way. Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes following a similar track. They're looking for their kind of guys. They recognize their culture, their environment, their mentality is incredibly important to the team's success. And Hassanin fits what they're looking for to an absolute T. So he's a great culture fit, great locker room guy who's only going to get better and better. He is 100% on the upswing. His ceiling, we don't know where it is, right? He's basically played 2 years of starting football. He's new to playing football. He's not like this was a guy who grew up playing it from like the age of 5. He's got great physical tools. He will get better with coaching, better with time. And he's already, if you look at his production, doing things that guys who have been a lot more experienced than him, looking at Sawyer, looking at James Pierce Jr., he's right at their level at the collegiate ranks, even with less experience. I think in this Lions coaching staff with Dan Campbell, that squad fitting into that locker room, developing, growing, he will eventually become a quality player. And in the meantime, his intelligence and intensity fits exactly what you're looking for in terms of a depth piece if needed down the stretch. Hopefully you don't. Hopefully you avoid the injury bug, but let's be real, it hits everybody at some point. Lions fans, of course, you know this, unfortunately, better than anybody. Final bullet here. The Detroit Lions have continued this entire offseason, despite losing their coordinators, having some guys leave. Of course, the retiring news of Ragnow that dropped over the past week or so. Despite all of that news and a little bit of a chance to water down the culture, water down the talent, they've done a great job making sure they're bringing in their guys, keeping that locker room solid, and that wonderful culture in place. This is a great job by Dan Campbell, great job by Brad Holmes, and this kid, Hassanin right here, has a bright future in front of him with this Detroit Lions squad.